sponsor if you feel moved to, and also there's ways to donate on the auction site. But speaking of the auction site, to our bidders and buyers, there's been lots of activity already. So thank you so much. And to all the participants who have joined us tonight. You know, 2020 Art for AIDS, we did what we ask our clients to do while they're in our care. Trust the process, put one foot in front of the next, even if we can't see the end or where we're going, and just keep moving one day at a time. Tonight's program, we're going to have jury members introduce artists. Each artist will talk for a couple of minutes. And we have Andrea Padilla, Greta and Manu Schnetzler, Sandra Chen Weinstein, and Charles and Selmo. And our jurors are DeWitt Chang and Susan Briel. Then we'll transition to a panel discussion and we'll have a Q&A. So please use the Q&A feature and ask questions of the artist. Jonathan, who is behind the scenes, will be fielding them to me. And so I'll be piping in from time to time to ask questions from the audience. Artists play such a critical role in our community and society, expressing the pain, the stress, the joy, everything in our times. And right now, despite, or maybe because we're living in such stressful times, artists continue to express their visions to the world. And they're so important and so critical, and you know, always, but especially right now. And so while we know there's a lot going on out in the world, we're gonna just switch focus and try to have some fun in the next week and bid and shop and support the Alliance Health Project and the critical work done here. So let's without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Susan Briel.
Good evening. I am so thrilled to participate in this conversation about photography. And I have the privilege of being able to introduce two of our amazing artists tonight. The first is Charles and Selmo. He is a nationally and internationally renowned photographer. He's exhibited all over the United States and Cuba. He uses a large format camera along with analog film. And he does that to create his amazing images of urban decay to depict memory and place within a social context. His work often concerns architecture and what I call architectural ghosts. And to use Charles's own words, he embraces the fusion of aesthetic forms with social ideas as a way of interpreting the past captured in the warm palette of decay. And I just so love that phrase, the warm palette of decay. So Charles, I'm hoping you can talk a little bit further about yourself and your work.
Sure, I'd love to. I want to thank the whole Art for AIDS community, first of all, for all the arduous work that's been involved in putting this together, and find it very interesting to step into the COVID era in a Zoom communication. So I would tell you, first of all, my initial background came from surviving an arduous formal arts education as a young painter. I did this for many years and ultimately transitioned to photography for a variety of personal reasons. Among them, I felt that photography had a very interesting subversive quality that I wasn't quite connecting with in painting. And as such, became enamored of the same kinds of places that I had actually painted. So thematically, what really came about was an embracing of what we would call peripheral urban spaces. So we're really looking at what is happening to the cities we've made, these perfected forms that slip off architectural plans and poured over by engineers, and ultimately they become these forgotten, broken places of enormous, intriguing hidden meanings. And so basically what I have been doing for a long time, whether it's the abandoned military bases of California or the Bay Area's derelict industrial facilities, and most particularly the incredibly rich site of living decay, Havana, Cuba, where I have been going for 20 years and been doing many other things there too, with arts collaborations with government organizations. because I'm basically looking for ways of visually finding and kind of mining intersections of what I call place memory and social context. So that basically means something pretty simple, and that is that a people will engender a sense of social memory. It's very important to them. And so I talk to people a lot wherever I go, and I hear their stories. That's part of the image. Although you will uniquely find there are never people in my photographs. And then social context has to do with what the populace, what the social scheme has to give to its own history as it looks back. The immediate context will transform their sense of memory. And so buildings have various forms, they have various iterations, particularly as they become repurposed to other things. All of this is very riveting to me. I love large format work, and I've worked really with these themes for a long time.
Thank you so much. I'm sure there's a lot of social mining that can happen right here in San Francisco. We are also really, really privileged to have Sandra Chen Weinstein with us. She doesn't talk a lot about herself or give a lot of interviews. This is her first time on Zoom. And I can tell you she is fascinating. She's won just about every award in existence. She apprenticed with a Magnum photographer, and she has exhibited in our very own Asian Art Museum, as well as the Aperture Gallery in New York City, just to name a few places. Her work, The River, is from a recent project of intimate portraits of women. And she also has donated a second piece, which is Subversive Selfie State Number 3. And that explores the unconscious subversive identity and sexuality with others and oneself. So Sandra, we are so excited to have you. Can you talk a little bit more about your work and yourself?
Firstly, I want to thank Alliance House Project to invite me for such a great opportunity. Thank you. Actually, I'm a self-taught photographer, and due to my experience traveling overseas and for my creative process, I was inspired by Harikati Prasad to do the work, focus on precise moment. So everything was captured in the camera in the precise moment. So the timing and what you're trying to express on the narration is only a few seconds. And so I was very inspired by Magnum photos, and I was able to continue my work through documentary that I have done in different countries. And I also, recent years, I work for my own personal project, which is towards women. It's called She/They, about women's and also LGBTQ project is called Transcend that I recently developed as well. And most subject I was done in San Francisco and Bay Area. As a matter of fact, I will be holding another artist talk for that particular subject called Transcend. And but thank you so much. They are basically my work is driven by the narration and the context. And I think my work is, can both be photojournalism or fine art. And because, you would like to highlight the human condition, that's what my favorite part is, to show that we ourselves in a very competitive world and also in a very diverse culture, I found that connection and human condition is my main thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to you, DeWitt.
Great job, Susan. I am going to start with Andrea Padilla. Andrea was born in 1979 in Buenos Aires, Argentina at the age of 18. She moved to Bogota, where she continued her education, studied fine arts at the University of Bogota, also completing a master's degree in photography at La Salle College. Padilla's first large-scale exhibition was at the Contemporary Art Museum in Bogota in 2004, where she won first prize for her series of panoramic landscapes of American deserts. She's since participated in art festivals all over the world, including New York City, Bogota, Buenos Aires, San Francisco, and Rome, to name a few, presenting work alongside Andres Serrano and Alexander Apostol. Since moving to the US, she has continued to explore her love of art by producing various photographic projects, including her Negative Space series and public art project under the New York Parks and Recreation Commission. And for Art for AIDS, she has donated two lovely floral still lifes, Tulip and Popis, P-O-P-I-S, which I presume is part of the Latin name of a flower. So Andrea, could you talk a little bit about these two images, and also how, what other projects you're involved in? You seem to be an artist of a wide range and keeping very busy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here tonight. For my day to day, I run a photography studio business. I have a boudoir studio where I mostly shoot boudoir and fine art nudes. And artistically, I have spent most of my career photographing deserts, cityscapes, focusing more on the vastness and the emptiness of those places. This year, as we all know, it's been an interesting one. And one of the positive outcomes for me was I had time to allocate time to this project that I've been wanting to do for a while, which was to work with flowers and dead nature. And my assistant happens to be a florist. So I asked her to bring a bunch of flowers and the poppies, the dead poppies, and like dead nature. So it was a creative process where when I have like some things planned in my head that happen and another things that just appear in the process, I wanted to capture the stillness and the beauty of those objects, almost treating them like the nude human body that I do in studio. So I ended up with 15 images, and I had like almost 20 different types of flowers. One of the interesting parts of this is that I decided to print these images on like reflective metallic frames. So when I got the images on the, printed from the lab, it was almost like the piece started getting its own like identity. And I started having a conversation with the piece, and I'm really happy because it's hard to photograph the actual print, but when you see the tulip upside down, and I had it in front of me and I look at it, and it was a dark, dense, black background. It was a mirror. Basically, I saw myself, and then I saw the flower in front of me, and that evoked emotions and reflections about, like, first of all, self-reflection, and then just being grateful that I'm able to, be an artist and create work and donate it too. So I'm really pleased, and I want to explore more doing, flowers and maybe incorporating the nude, the human. I love photographing women and, fine art nudes. So I'm just kind of thinking, I did also some underwaters that I haven't finished up yet, but I think that's where I'm at.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'll have some questions for you later on.
Thank you.
And let's see, Greta and Manu Schnetzler have been pursuing a common vision in their collaborative photography work, including their interest in night photography for over 25 years. Whether traveling afar, paddling the bay, or walking around their neighborhood, they continue to explore their environment to see common sights in a different way. Their team approach opens up multiple perspectives, revealing the mystery of the everyday. And for this year's auction, the Schnetzlers have been longtime friends of AHP. They've donated this wonderful landmark, which everyone will recognize, called Triangle 2020. Could you talk about, well, I'll ask you some questions about your general practice later on, but tell us about this image and how it happened.
So since we have been in quarantine and spending a lot of time at home, as everyone else has over the last 7 months, we have focused on shooting things close to home. And I think rather than it being a constraint, it's freed us a lot. It's made us much more observant of our neighborhood and our environment. So the image Triangle 2020 was shot from our front window, looking out toward Twin Peaks. We watch every year for the triangle to go up. And we were really wondering this year, with Pride as constrained as it was in the virtual environment, whether we would have a pink triangle on Twin Peaks. And when the glowing triangle was installed by Illuminate SF and the team of volunteers, it was like a glowing beacon. It just meant so much. And I know it meant so much to so many in terms of the difficult time that everyone's been going through with the pandemic, and the hope that that pink triangle represents, and the affirmation of identity and inclusiveness that San Francisco represents for everyone. So we thought it was just the best image for AHP, for the Art for AIDS auction this year. So that's why we chose that image. It's part of a whole series of images that we do of Twin Peaks and Sutro Tower, which is like an icon to us. And we see constant changing of light and fog and moon setting behind Twin Peaks, and the sunlight rising from the east and glinting off the houses on top of Twin Peaks. It's just an amazing subject matter, and we literally have hundreds and hundreds of photos and time-lapse photos and videos of that scene. And we've also been, Mino's especially been getting into very early morning kayaking. So we've been doing a lot of photos of the waterfront and perspectives that we hadn't noticed before. And just being everything within 15 minutes of our home base has been a real challenge, but also an opening up and an inspiration. We've been taking photos together for over 25 years as a team. A lot of night photography for most people who know our work. So some of the work that's been created in the last 7 months is a little different from our usual work. We've had more time in daylight hours to do photography, for example. So, but we've really focused on being close to home, and that's been really special to us. And, you know, working together as a team, we've probably done less of that and more separate projects in the last 7 months, which has also been a little different. But we're longtime supporters of Art for AIDS. We've been contributing to the auction for over 20 years, and just have incredible love for the team there and the work that they do. So we're happy to be a part of Art for AIDS again this year, and really hope that this image is inspiring to other people as it is for us.
Thank you. I think I hand it back to DK at this point.
Thank you, everyone. So we're now going to transition to a panel discussion, and everyone's will be invited to turn their cameras on. And I'm going to turn it over to Susan for the first question, and then you all just take it away.
Great. I have so many questions. But first, you know, I think that there are different stages of viewing a photograph, and what first catches your eye is maybe different than what you later see and what you finally remember when you leave a gallery or you leave a private home where you viewed the photograph. And I'm just wondering if anyone wishes to talk about that at all? I'm hoping you do. Charles.
Sure, I could say that, Susan, as you and I discussed, there really are a lot of ways of looking at photographic art. And the photograph itself is under constant duress as a medium that is participated in by many, many different forms. It has so many faces now. This is the gift of the digital era. I'm uncertain about the wisdom of that gift, by the way. But as an analog photographer, that's probably what I would say. But I think that, as is the case more universally in any art form, there will be the first impression, and perhaps this is the initial impact that is colored by the perceptions, the accumulated history of the person. So it's as if they're bringing they're bringing baggage. It's like they're bringing a lens with them, but we look for the moment when they're held and brought to a deeper meaning. So there may well be a visual appeal. And I think in this way, art, photography perhaps in particular, is capable of conducting a kind of seduction, because the viewer may be pulled in by something that's intriguing, but to hold them longer is to mine other meanings that have to do with them personally. And so the worst thing you would see in an exhibit is someone kind of waltzing through an exhibit and being done with it quickly. You have to find them, you have to reach inside them and arrest them long enough to let those other permutations take hold. So in a sense, I think photography is kind of an exaggeration of some of these forces, but I think that art participates in them universally. Just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you so much.
I have a question for anyone who wants to respond. Several of you seem to work in different series, different bodies of work, whether that's they're sequential or whether you have them going at the same time. Well, for example, because of the pandemic, everyone is having to change their habits a little bit. So how do you balance out your previous work and then having to alter your working methods, even your subject matter, during the past 6-7 months? Anybody?
I think I mentioned when I was speaking about our image for the auction that we've just focused on things a lot closer to home.
Mhm.
And I think focus on appreciating beauty in the small things, rather than a more expansive view that we often have. We're traveling or doing workshops and going to places that are specifically, chosen for doing night photography. And we've just been more open to making images anywhere we are, any time of day. And that's been very freeing on the one hand. On the other hand, there were some workshops and things we had planned to participate in that we've been not able to do. So that's been harder. One thing we've been doing is going back and curating our own work and taking the time to look back through kind of the history of images, which is a huge number of images over 25 years, and finding common threads between those images that we're making in the past and now. And I think that's one thing that photography does very well, is to capture that link between the past and the present. And to me, it's all about light and time. Photography is all about light and time and capturing time. And when we do long exposure photography, it's about capturing the passage of time in one image. So looking back over our work and finding those common threads has been a gift that the pandemic has given us, in terms of the time at home and sitting down and pausing from making more images and just really reflecting on the body of work that we have.
I think that for me, now that you asked that question, it was more than like I reflect now, and I had I didn't need to have like a model or like a woman or like anybody. I just went to like a still object, like a flower, that nature. So I guess also like this time brought for me to like, I didn't thought about it till now. It's like, but yeah, like probably that was just create something without traveling and going to a desert, going to a city, just bring it home, put it in the studio lighting and seeing the beauty on like the silence of the studio and reflect to that.
For me, it's a little bit more challenging because I know, my photography is all about documentary mainly. And so I wasn't able to travel to Bay Area from Orange County. I able to continue work on one of my projects I was working on about butterflies towards more ecological system. Also, I was able to doing more different type of photography. It's using compositive photography to focus on COVID thing. So it looks really different from my previous work. And I'm still developing to it.
I love it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I think
One
constraints,
question from the audience that is actually related to this duet, that is about if any of you have COVID specific related projects, or if this time has it, in addition to, I mean, I think you've said a lot about, or I've heard a lot of how you are, how it's affecting you personally, but is there any COVID shots coming up or shows that are, this is my documenting this time? No is a fine answer.
Answer.
Okay, go ahead, do it.
oh, I have a question since three of our four photographers have answered. I wanted to ask Charles, now that you can't go to Cuba, are you forced into finding beautiful ruins in San Francisco in the Bay Area?
Well, if it wasn't for the incredible sophistication of our insurance system and also the value of real estate, that would be possible. But what you do not find in the Bay Area or in our major cities, barring Detroit and parts of Philadelphia, what you do not find in the West is sites really that would be juicy enough to court me for one of my multi-year projects. These projects I do, I mean, they will go 10 and 15 years. And a lot of it is really getting cemented into this social documentary rhythm where I am really going back and I'm photographing the same places in many cases again and again. So to answer your question, it's very frustrating. Cuba is off limits. And in addition, US citizens are clearly going to be persona non grata for a long time because we don't know how to do it. Their view of our health protocols, you can imagine. So it means that while it was true I was going 5 or 6 times a year and having wonderful collaborations with always government arts organizations, as galleries there are government organizations, juicy curating projects and all kinds of things, it's all in abeyance at the moment. So Greta, I would turn to you and resonate with what you said so well. I'm thinking, oh boy, she's been there. Because honestly, I've had to go back through older work and I am finding those interestingly contiguous threads and knit things together. And it's intriguing, but I still long so much to be in the field. I long for those corollary activities, the curating work, and many other things. So I've had to patch through. I'm waiting for the sky to open, I suppose. I can't wait to travel again. Regrettably, my best projects are heavily contingent upon the ability to get on planes.
We're all feeling that, I think.
I'm okay.
So Sandra, I have a question. I think that you mentioned you're a photojournalist. And I see you and I see many of the other artists tonight as portraiture artists, whether you're doing a portrait of a flower or a portrait of, a ruined piece of architecture that's beautiful. And maybe a portrait artist can also be a photojournalist. And I don't know the difference. So I'm wondering if you can talk about that or anyone else can talk about that.
Yes, I think, it really pending from my personal thought that photography is documentary mostly. And depending on the narration and the context, portrait can be both photojournalism and just portrait photography. Photojournalism just means that it covers all different subject matter. And portrait is more focused on expression on one human condition in a close-up. And I think, perhaps you were talking about, portrait photography like Richard Avedon and Cindy Sherman. They are more, their photography is more in a controlled environment as a more almost like so-called studio photographers. And but to me, both of them are, it could be both photojournalism and portrait, and I have done both. When I first started with my project, I work on social political issues such as women in the Middle East called Arab Spring, Women of Arab Spring. And I work in India called Faces of India. Now in recent year, I'm more towards personal project, which is women. I call She/They, which is one of the picture I have a show and donate. It's called The River. And that is from one of my She and They project. To me, it could be both portrait and documentary photojournalism. Thank you.
Certainly, work can be social documentary at heart. Dorothea Lange, Robert Frank, even Alex Soth, these people really have brought that to a high level. I don't know about the rest of you, but I sure miss Pier 24, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a very good point, Sandra.
Well, thank you for pointing it out.
Yeah.
One more question we have from the audience is also for you, Sandra. Can you give a little more background into the inspiration for Symbols of Selfie State number 3? This person said it's got their imagination running wild.
Actually, it depends on my project. This work is actually it's a social event I went to, and I think these are working focus on women, and I think this has a lot to say about the subject matter. It's because it's called Serasive Selfie number 7. And she is wearing a mask, and the way she laid and the flowers around her, it has a lot of controversial of how women's has, trying to demonstrate in self-determination, their self-identity. And this demonstration actually is an interactive performance with the audience. So based on, it's a free event, not free event, but free interactive with the performer. And this has a lot to do with the gender and sexist issue. And it's quite interesting point for how participants were able to express themselves and interacted to this subject, to this woman who was right there. And so at the same time, a lot of people, as you know, in the digital age, people take iPhone pictures. So a lot of iPhone picture around. Would this be another iPhone picture that people just capture and forget? Or is this picture is going to stand out as a social political issue for demonstrate how women's portray or represent maybe perhaps in the wrong genre? And that is why it was interesting to have that pictures. Thank you.
I want to know if the size of your photographs or the the medium on which you print your photograph, whether it's metal or silk or paper, if that's important in your work?
That's a very good question. I tend to be more old school. So for me, women's subject and transcend, which is another LGBTQ project, this is more a subject need to be maintained the traditional way to view it. I think if you use a different media, may have spoiled it because it's not an architecture kind of picture or it's a different kind of subject matter. Like I said, sometimes the narration and the context of each picture kind of decide what kind of photograph that can present in the media. And I kept the more traditional way because to me, it's very emotional, personal project. And usually like I said, I print it with just photo mat papers, or it can be a lobster, depends on if it's color or black and white. And if I have more black in there, I will probably using exhibition fiber photo paper because that's the best photo paper to bring out the black and the contrast.
Anyone else want to answer that question?
I think for me is nowadays, I mean, I was born in '79. I learned photography, film photography in 35 millimeters. I did all my panoramic landscape work in 35 millimeters, and I printed this beautiful, like matte, black and white, large formats that I loved. And in just seeing the artworks printed at those enormous sizes, it was inexplicable. Like, you know, when you create an image and then you see it big, it's like, oh. And now, like years pass, and I see all these new materials that I was exposed also for a studio that, like, you know, what are the options for my clients, how to better present a nude, what are the options in the market. I find like a material can be almost like part of the intention of the piece. Especially for me now, this new work that I did, it was like the metallic actually completed the artwork. It was another element. It was another voice. It changed the experience completely. Just to be able to have a black ocean and then a subtle image in there. It could be anything. And then just look at it from the distance and you just see the art, and then you get closer and you're part of that art. So I found that very interesting. I did some acrylic too, which I didn't love as much. But I hear like what Sandra said, like, you know, I was very traditional into like fine art, museum quality prints, large formats. And now I'm like, oh, these all new materials, they have a voice too. And it's a voice worth to explore, at least for myself.
Charles, did you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. I think these issues of media and process definitely lurk in the shadows wherever I go. So what basically seemed to be the case is that as you come through this medium, you're exposed to a tsunami of potential influences. And of course, you may well be quite absorbed, in my case, by someone like Edward Bertinsky or Andrew Moore, and you're looking at this. But in the end, you really have to meet it on your own terms. So what I realized really is that I had certain privileges because I own and operate a large format digital printing studio, a photographic printing studio. I have my feet in two worlds. I do not use any digital capture. I use a 1952 Crown Graphic 4x5 camera, same birth date as myself. And basically the medium in a what is a virtual candy store of tools, which really the studio really is. I'm able to drum scan. So basically I capture with analog processes because I go to analog places. It just feels right to me. And I'm in love with the saturation of film chemistry. But then in order to produce large prints and to bring home a sense of scale, because I'm looking for a way of that image to sort of subsume me. I want it to be bigger than me. And so now that has been the case. And in a response to producing digital images of really large scale, what I've really been enjoying doing mostly the last several years is producing images on translucent silk fabric, and they are 7 by 10 feet. They're big. And they really do kind of allow me to bring home a much more personal sensibility of the place itself. It's as if I'm bringing home the streets themselves. And I think that the only way I could get there was by saying goodbye to the dollar sign and realizing, forget about selling work. Find corollary activities, teaching, the digital printing studio, of course, as DeWitt knows, my workshops in the past, going to Havana, my photographic workshops, these seem to be very viable ways of keeping the spark fresh and keeping it selfishly to myself and not worrying about selling. And that finally got my head clear enough to tell me the medium that I wanted to pursue. It took a number of years, but I have a little bit of reputation for large frame prints. They're heavy, bulky, expensive, and cumbersome. And I love printing on silk. You know, it's, you know, the precision of paper is thrown away.
I'm just was going to ask Jonathan if we could just show the silk piece, if it's possible, to just get an image of that as you're talking about it, because I think one of the downsides, I'll say, of an auction that's entirely digital is that when you're looking at the pieces on your computer or your phone, you might not know that this is actually a photograph printed on silk. And so I just wanted to let the viewers know. And also I wanted to say we're you know, we'd hope to go for a half hour, but these things are just, they're too good, they're too juicy. But so we're going to wind down, but I wanted to ask one final question, which is, why Art for AIDS? Why, what does it mean to you to contribute as you do to the Alliance Health Project and to this particular fundraiser?
I want to start first. For me, I've been part of the family for about 10 years on the other side, because you know, my husband is part of the family. So I was the bartender at the events, or, you know, the whole serving champagne and just kind of being just giving a tiny little grain of sand of the project. And I don't know, like this year, you know, it was right and it happened. So that's my main reason. I personally want to say, like, I hope everybody enjoyed the art talk, and thank you, Art for AIDS and in Alliance Health Project, and everybody that is supporting all of us, and everybody that is feeding or buying art tonight is important, and it brings joy to my soul, and I love you guys.
Yes, I think it means everything, especially in such a difficult time for, you know, for our society. I think, you know, it's an honor to be part of it for years, to support such a wonderful organization, to look after us, you know, especially the people who need help. Photography is about connection. It's about focus on what is important in our society. So I'm very, very proud to be part of, you know, this Art for AIDS. And I hope people who donate their time, like the staffers, people, you know, invest their time in helping out. I think it's an incredible task. I truly appreciate it.
I think there are some really interesting resonances between what was initially called the AIDS pandemic and the current COVID pandemic. And I think, if anything, in a curious way, this moment, 2020, has deepened my connection to Art for AIDS. I have lost 2 close friends to AIDS. There is that personal dimension for me. But in addition to that, it's so encouraging to see an organization so, in my view, so remarkably well run, I know some of you were smiling. but really, things happen in such a cooperative manner. It is really such a pleasure to be on the jury, having started as a contributor, and then according to DeWitt's very gracious invitation years ago, coming onto the jury panel, and it's been marvelous. You know, really, it's been a wonderful way of knowing all of you too.
I'd like to say a word. I've been involved as a juror for, I don't even know how many years, 10, 12 something years, at the invitation of, I think it was Michaela Van Zool eons ago. And when I got involved, it was just such a pleasure to join a group of people who loved art but also wanted to serve the community. And there, I'm talking into my mic again. And the basically the community spirit is just terrific. And it's a way, the exhibitions that we've had over the years have gotten better and better every year. They've always been a tremendous amount of fun to participate in. So whether or not those continue, whether we're Zooming next year, remains to be seen. But I think it's a great organization and you know, exemplary in a way, and makes me proud to be a San Franciscan.
And DeWitt, you've been for all those many years, I feel like, you know, hanging the live auction pieces, you know, running around the floor with a ginormous ladder and tool belt, and you know, everyone on this call has been involved for a very long time. And I didn't actually realize that until Andrea, you mentioned how many years you've been involved. And it is, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for participating. I want to thank all the attendees who joined us tonight and had a listen. And I want to remind folks that these pieces that we saw tonight and talked about and heard about are available to bid on, except for the Schnetzler's piece, which is unfortunately already sold at the buy it now price. So that's really exciting. And we are going to be joined, we'll have two other talks, mixed media and painting tomorrow and Thursday. And then Saturday is the live auction soiree, which will also be, you'll be watching on YouTube. So get some wine, get some food, get ready. We're gonna do this thing virtually. And I thank you all for participating.
Thank you, DK. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone. We're gonna see a little closing video.
The nuances in my work is in relationship of form and color.
It's about San Francisco and change and the layers that are in all the buildings that give us the narratives of the city.
I always seem to find myself in coming of age series. It's about being between two states and that moment where you're sort of neither here nor there.
I love to kind of bring in that it's sort of spontaneity at the same time as deliberate. But there's just something so life-affirming about it. So that's really why